He began his life in show business singing as the covered man. He became one of the world's favourite police detectives, Kenneth Hutchinson, or Hutch for short. And now with a litany of acting and directing credits behind him, he loves to champion a Nobel Prize-winning Chilean poet. David Soul, good morning.
Good morning.
And it's a pleasure to talk to you.
Oh, thank you. The first thing I want you to know is that after that initial item that you put on about American politicians or diplomats that you have over there, I'm American. I have only the nicest things to say about the Irish.
Is that right?
Yep.
So if you were sending cables back to Washington about us Irish...
I'd put you all in glowing terms, wouldn't I?
Good, good. That's
very funny.
Are you a regular visitor, David?
Well, I have been. It seems over the years, over the last, 30 years, I guess I have been. Yeah. I was living, I did a film there back in the early 80s. And at the time, put my kids into Blackrock in Dublin there. Oh, I see. So I lived there for about 8 months, something like that. And
how did the kids get on in Blackrock College?
Oh, well, they had to go back and repeat the class. Never mind. No, they did great. They loved it. They actually got involved in rugby.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
I see. Yeah. What age were they at the time?
8? 7 and 8.
Okay, so
something like that.
Too much rugby and too little academic studies.
Probably. I don't know.
so you spent 8 happy months here?
Yeah, I did. And even had a typewriter for that.
And when was that? Can you recall?
1980.
1981. Okay. And
yeah. That's quite a while ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Gee,
yes, I won't tell you how long. But anyway, are you? You're 67 now. I'm sorry to remind you of that, but I still have the great memories of Starsky and Hutch and your number one hits, things like Silver Lady and Don't Give Up on Me, Baby. But are you in reflective mode at this stage of your life? Do you look
the problem there is you just don't remember that much to reflect upon. No, I guess some of me is reflective. Although there's, you just never quit. The door opens, the sun comes up in the morning, and man, you want to get that brand new day. You got a new idea, let's go do it. So that never quits. But
your autobiography, it's been in the preparation for quite a while.
Yeah, it's been there for a long time, and I think probably it'll keep being prepared. Even as they're preparing for my funeral, I think it's being prepared.
And what is, because I think back, we were expecting something in about 2 or 3 years ago, but it was put on the back burner, was it?
Yeah, I didn't like it. And part of it was that I couldn't remember things, and there's just so much. There's so much that it's just difficult to sift through it and figure out what is meaningful, what is worthwhile, what is chaff. Yeah. And so I put it aside, hoping that I'd get some sort of a light that would come along and tell me which direction to take this thing. But it's still there, still simmering.
And when you say, you can't remember certain things, is that because you don't want to remember them? Are you uneasy with some of what happened in your past, or what exactly?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just a question of, memory is as lovely as it is, it's always nice to be reminded of things that you've forgotten. And it's like a new discovery every day. You have people saying, and don't you remember you did this? Oh, right. Yes. Yeah, of course I did. Yeah. So, it's lovely to remember and reflect upon those things. But
when people come up to you and recognize you and they say the words Starsky and Hutch at this stage,
well, yeah.
Are you happy to recall?
Yeah, well, sometimes, yeah, but mostly I get a little more respect these days. They can actually call me. Is that you, David Soul? And I'm grateful that I finally know who I am. Are you David Soul?
Oh, I see. As distinct from Hutch.
Yeah.
They stopped calling you Hutch.
Yeah, some people do, but it's funny. They got this kind of reverse Dorian Gray attitude about people that are they've known over their lives somewhere how they think that you are always 35.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I do. I do. I just associate you with.
Well, young boy, I'm not 35.
All right. Okay. And tell me, are you still good buddies with Paul Michael Glaser, Starsky?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, he'll always be a dear friend.
Yeah. That car, that wonderful car. The 73 Ford Galaxy 500.
Yeah, I've gotten issues with that car. Got more requests for autographs than we did. So.
And, but mind you, I believe a few years ago, the makers of the TV shows kindly sent you some DVDs.
Right.
But given, I think you're a bit sort of miffed with the fact that even though it was a huge success, that you didn't end up with more money, let's say, out of the exercise.
Well, I mean, yeah, all of these producers, they basically they didn't allow, you know, in the early contract, and of course we overlooked it in the early contracts because, you know, things have changed technologically so much over these past, since the 70s, obviously, that none of the new media, so to speak, was provided for. And instead they have that catch-all phrase, you know, for anything that is hereby, you know, invented or found, and anything else in perpetuity and whatever, you know, is otherwise, that kind of thing. So they don't come back to the artist and say, hey, you know what, you really deserve to have a piece of this. They just basically take what the contract with that as they interpret it, and produce what they want. And it's kind of it's wrong, actually. A lot of actors and artists have suffered for that very reason.
Yeah, actually, we were talking recently to a group from the Brady Bunch, and they suffered a similar fate.
Right.
Loads of money was made out of it, but they ended up signing a contract initially in their innocence that left them with very little money.
That's correct.
Out of what was one of the most popular TV shows over the last 30, 40 years. So.
Yeah. Well, you know, rights is a very precious thing. And it's not just for film and television, but it goes over into all the areas of the arts and of art itself. Branding is such an important thing today that if you don't control the brand, you know, and the brand can be associated with things like Starsky and Hutch, you know, that's the image of that is very, very strong and worth a lot of money. And so you know that the producers and the corporations are going to try to control those things as much as they can.
And David, taking you back to when you were in your teens, apparently acting wasn't an automatic choice because at one stage you could have either been a priest or a baseball player. Tell me more.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, I was a pretty good country pitcher in my day, and I was seen by the Chicago White Sox, professional baseball team out of Chicago in the American League, and called in for a trial, and I was ready to go to spring training and put a contract. Those were the days when you had to maintain your amateur status, and but I got interested in something else, so I blew the contract idea and went off to Mexico to study political science.
That was the end of that.
Yeah, that was the end of that. And my father, of course, is a historian and political scientist, or was. He passed away a couple of years ago. But he was also a pastor. And, you know, as I look back over the years, I think the person that you rebel against the most early on in your life, perhaps, you know, your parents are the people that you want to emulate on down the road, particularly as you begin to raise your own children and you see what they were trying to do.
And you just realize, you appreciate perhaps.
I wanted to be, you know, a pastor and or a teacher was, you know, he was my hero.
Right. So. And how seriously did you contemplate following his career path and becoming, or his vocation and becoming a Lutheran minister?
Well, I guess until the events of life changed all that, you know. I was a young kid and adventuresome, and I fell in love at an early age, and of course that didn't work out. Meantime, we'd had a child, so that changes the topography, and those best laid plans, you know, kind of get changed, and that's what happened. So I became an actor by accident, you know. I'm an accidental actor, accidental singer. Started out with music, so put myself through school, and music, little by little, turned into an interest in theater, and then that took me out of the Midwest as an escape. And I wanted to get out. I was, you know, felt a little chained there in the Middle West, and off to New York, and the seeds were planted there. So from there out to Los Angeles in the late 60s, 67, 68, and been out there ever since, all until 92, and then I moved to Europe, and I'm very happy being here.
And why did you leave LA behind?
I got tired of it.
Why?
I got tired of it's all about the business of the business of the business, and I think the innocence of it, if you can call it that, the innocence of it when I first moved out in the 60s had disappeared, and it was dog eat dog. There wasn't really chance for real friendships, or I didn't find them. I didn't see them, and it was all about who you know, who can do what for you, maintaining you're only as good as your last film, box office, #1 ratings, all that kind of pressure is put on performers and their associates. You're only as good as your last film, and you're only as valuable as your last film. So I got tired of that. I got tired of sitting around and trying to figure myself out that way. Either that or just hanging out with an umbilical cord, a telephone wire, waiting for a phone call from my agent. So I just said, that's more to life than that. I want out of here.
And when you came to Paris and then London, did you discover that professional happiness?
Well, I continued to work, which was really interesting because Starsky and Hutch and other work that I had done, I suddenly realized was an international phenomenon, and so I got work where I went, and that was great. And one thing led to another, particularly when I came to London. I was now doing the thing which I dreamed about doing for years, not just as a feather in my cap, but as a way of life, and that was the theater. So, and I also met my wife in the theater. So I'm very, very happy here.
Right, and but personal happiness, I suppose you've been in a number of marriages and you've 6 children. Was that more elusive over the years?
You figure that one out yourself. Marriage is always a difficult thing, particularly in this crazy business. And it's I'm not proud of the past by any stretch of the imagination, but I do have 6 very beautiful children. That's for sure.
And when you say you're not proud of the past, what particularly? Because
I don't come from that kind of. My father was my parents were married 64 years. We of our generation and younger generations, our parents generally stayed married. But I think starting with mine, and we got the diaspora opened up. The families started to get split, and the country got smaller because communications got better, and you didn't stay local. You moved into the cities. And all these kind of things, these sort of things impacted on relationship. And I think families started to feel the pressure. Marriages and relationships felt the pressure, and I think that's what happened to me too. Eyes wander. It's like experiences happen. You ever been to a town? You walk into a town and you're there for a couple of hours. You say, "Oh, gee whiz, I'd like to move here. This is wonderful." It can often be that way in the business with the opposite sex.
That, in other words, the first impressions are good.
Oh, they're great. You want to move.
Yeah.
There's something new and something fresh. So
yeah.
I'm not proud of that. No.
Yeah. And you've spoken about your alcoholism and you've spoken as part of a campaign where in one instance, I think it was your third wife, that you admitted that you had hit her and abused her. How difficult was that?
What?
Admitting
to hit her?
Admitting to, because you were seen, I suppose, you're seen over the years, even thinking about your career as a singer and an actor in Starsky and Hutch, a sort of role model in many people's eyes of somebody who...
What, are you saying because I'm a role model, therefore I'm not human? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just saying...
Okay, well, those moments happen when you're out of control,
Sure.
So...
is that why the autobiography is a little bit more difficult than you imagined to write? I'm just wondering.
Well, not really, no, because I'm quite candid about that. I have nothing to nothing to hide. It's just not something I want to. I feel like that was in 1982, and it's well, we're going on 30 years ago, aren't we?
Yeah.
You know, how many times can you relive what happened 30 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is, my relationship with my wife, my ex-wife, is just fine.
Yeah.
You know, you live and you learn. You grow up. You learn these things, and you move on. And the biggest part of it is forgiving oneself, and then seeking forgiveness from others. And I think we've done that, and now we can look at it and be of help to other people who are going through the same sort of dilemma, problem.
So with the passage of time, are you more at peace with yourself, would you say?
Yeah, which of course I am. I am totally happy with my situation right now. I'm happily married and wonderful woman. And
Helen Steen, and I believe
Helen Snow.
I beg your pardon, Snow, and she had never.
Helen Steen. I'm not sure I've met her before.
No, and apparently when you met her, she'd never heard of Starsky and Hutch, which helped, I'm sure.
Yeah, boy. That's absolutely true. How refreshing, huh?
Yes, that probably helped things. And she's 30 years younger as well. So what about the age gap? Is that? Yeah.
Yeah.
You tell me.
What a lucky guy. Huh?
You tell me.
Well, I don't think age is age. There's some 30-year-olds that walk around like old men.
Yes.
So there's some of us who are a little bit senior and still have still have some life in them.
Yes.
So there you go. What can I say?
Exactly.
I'm very happy.
Yes, indeed.
Now listen, the reason we're talking.
Yes, I know.
Is
we're going to get to that now because.
You've taken this over.
No, the Chilean.
We're going to get into all this.
The Chilean poet Pablo Neruda. I was going to get to it. I assure you. But
When?
Yes. Now is your moment. You're coming to the West Cork Literary Festival in Bantry in July, and you're coming because you're a big fan of Pablo Neruda. Tell us more.
Well, he's a magnificent poet. He's noted as perhaps the greatest poet of any age of the 20th century in any language. A Nobel Prize winner in 1971, and I've always loved his poetry, but I never got into his sort of connection between life and his work. And over the past few years, his poetry has led me back into why he wrote the poetry that he did. And as I've uncovered more and more, I find that the life that he lived was as fascinating as the poetry that he's written. And he lived what he wrote, and he wrote what he lived. Starting out at an early age of 20, about 18, 20, he wrote poetry. He became kind of a rock star of his period in the 20s, back in Chile. And to this day, actually, he's still held he's still revered there. But as was the case back then, artists they needed to work, they needed a job. They didn't make a lot of money being a poet. They were given jobs as diplomats, as consuls. And so he started out in the Far East, in Malaysia and Indonesia, and then he moved over to Europe. Became very much a part of the Spanish Civil War, and his best friend Lorca was murdered, and he became passionately involved in politics. Back to Mexico, wrote the epic poetry, the history of South America, starting with Machu Picchu and before, and all of this, and then moved on and became a senator. Was involved in the late 60s and 70s in the battle between Pinochet and Allende. And Allende was a dear friend. All through this, he's writing, and at the same time, he's hip deep into life as it's presented, and his life becomes as fascinating as his work, and I think reflective of the tempestuousness of the 20th century, the changes that have happened. He writes right on up through the start of the Vietnam War, and is reflected. All of this is reflected.
And David, have you a few favourite lines of Neruda that you'd like to share with us this
Well,
morning?
let me see. I mean, I didn't think you were going to ask myself that.
Full of surprises this morning.
However, yeah, but here, yeah. Let me give you. This is one from his book called The Captain's Verses, which is a particular favorite of mine. It's called Your Laugh. Take away my bread, if you will. Take away the air, but do not take away your laugh. Do not take away the rose, the spear which you unsheathe, the water that all at once bursts up in your joy, the sudden wave of plants that springs up at your feet. My struggle is hard, and sometimes I come home tired-eyed from having gazed all day at the unchanging earth. But as soon as I come in, your laugh rises to heaven, seeking me out, and opens up for me all the doors of life. My love, even in the hour of the deepest darkness, unsheathe your laugh. And if suddenly you see my blood staining the stones in the street, then laugh, because your laugh will be for my hands like a gleaming fresh sword. By the sea in autumn your laugh should spout up its shower of foam, and in spring, my love, I need your laugh like the long-awaited flower, the blue flower, the rose of my melodious homeland. Laugh at the night, at the day, at the moon, and laugh at the crookedness of streets on our island. Laugh at this awkward boy who loves you, but when I open my eyes and close them, when my footsteps pace on, and when my footsteps return, deny me bread and air, deny me light and spring, but never your laugh, for I should surely die.
Fantastic.